recorded, and we will publish the video online on the Theatre Network Australia VIPI website. And finally, if you drop off Zoom at any point, please reconnect through the link. So I will just begin just to share screen. Hang on a second. Here. Can everyone see my PowerPoint there? Okay. Yep. Awesome. I'm getting lots of nods. Thank you. By the way, these are also my contact details if you need them. rani@tna.org.au. I've just covered this. This is our structure for today. And then Simone, take it away. So Simone's just going to give a brief intro to Theatre Network Australia.
Hi all, thanks so much for joining us today. My name's Simone, as Rani said. I am a white woman with brown curly hair in a blue dress with the token white earphones for a Zoom session. I have been at TNA now, I think it's 5 years, and we were previously a Victorian only organisation, but we've now expanded nationally. So while the VIPI program is still Victorian based, we do have a national outlook. One of our key focuses is on advocacy, particularly prioritising the small to medium and independent sector, who struggle sometimes to have a voice as opposed to some of the bigger organisations. Despite the lockdown, we still try and gather people to talk and to find out what's necessary, and sometimes that includes Zoom meetings, other times it's surveys, and just a lot of on the ground research and work to figure out what our priorities are moving forward. Some of the things that have emerged out of that have been this sort of program, VIPI, with a focus shifting from supporting organisations to supporting independent producers as a more nimble, agile, responsive, flexible model that we think is worth pursuing. Also in response to Me Too and the rampant sexual harassment in the industries, we've taken a real lead role in working towards safe theatres for all. We're a member organisation with over 400 members, and we love artists and they're central to everything we do. Finally, I'd probably just say that we are looking ahead to the future despite uncertainty with positivity, that we can aim for a safe, healthy and relevant sector. So wish us luck, join with us. Back to you, Rani.
Thanks, Simone. Thanks so much. Great. So I'll focus in on now on VIPI, on the Victorian Independent Producers Initiative. And by the way, if I'm looking this way, it's because my notes are here. So sorry about that. I'll try and, So VIPI supports independent producers and through them, independent artists and companies in the performing arts based in Victoria. And VIPI is an initiative of the Victorian Government through Creative Victoria, delivered in partnership with Theatre Network Australia. And there are 3 streams of VIPI. So the Producers Mentorship Program, the Unlocking Capacity Grant, which we'll be talking about today, and the Salon Series. And this program especially encourages applications from producers who identify as First Peoples, culturally linguistically diverse, deaf and disabled people, and people based regionally. In terms of who can apply for the Unlocking Capacity Grant, just a refresher to make sure we're on the same page. So it's for Victorian-based independent producers of performing arts who have a minimum 3 years experience in independent producing. And at least 50% of your professional time is dedicated to your independent producing practice. We are aware that this may have been impacted due to COVID, and I'll get on to some more specific frequently asked questions a bit later on in terms of how would you define 50% of your professional time. And finally, your producing portfolio must comprise of 50% of Victorian artists. I will just add as well, before I move on to the dates, a note about self-producing artists / self-producing companies. So basically, the strongest applicants to Unlocking Capacity will demonstrate how the producing work that they do supports a stable, a portfolio, or a suite of independent artists, independent collectives, and unfunded companies. So meaning you need to demonstrate how the benefits of your work as a producer goes beyond your own unfunded company. Otherwise, you would not be a priority to receive support from the Unlocking Capacity Grant. Some key dates for round 2. So there's 2 rounds for 2020 and 1 in 2021. So we opened round 2 on the 20th of August, and we will be closing the round at 5 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time on Thursday, 17th September. And this is for activities commencing on the 15th of January, 2021. It does take normally about 12 weeks from the closing date until the funding results are available. Next up, and excuse all the text on the slide here, but you know, it's all important information. I did want to share some learnings that we had from round 1 in terms of the applications that were looked on favorably by the panelists. So applications that were able to demonstrate strongly how they will support opportunities and a platform for diverse Victorian-based independent artists, collectives, or companies. And this includes not just their lived experience in terms of diversity, but also in terms of the art form that different artists practiced in. A few key points as well in terms of points of difference that people were able to, I suppose, articulate or express in their applications. So applications that outline innovative models and strategies that would benefit the independent producing sector as a whole were looked on favorably as well. So applications where the panel could see that by supporting this applicant, it would support and add value to other independent producers, that it would support and add value to collaborations with other independent producers, were seen as strong applications. And then secondly, applications that talk to innovative funding and business models in support of their independent producing practice was also looked on favorably by the panel. So for example, applications that talked about developing relationships, this is just an example, with the philanthropic sector. Applications that talked about wanting to develop entrepreneurial skills were also looked on favorably. And then the third point there, applications that were able to identify what is the professional development that the applicant needs to further their independent producing practice. And then it's even better if the applicant could name the organizations or the individuals or the programs that can help them develop these skill sets or these networks. Also naming the model by which you will develop yourself professionally. So for example, some people talked about having consistent one-on-one coaching supported through the grant. That made it really clear to the panelists in terms of how they were going to develop their skills and networks. Other people spoke about reviewing their internal operations, how they worked as an independent producing company, and that was how they were going to professionally develop themselves. And finally, applicants that look to cross-sector, so including non-art sector collaborations and relationship building also stood out. So having a lens that was complementary to the independent producing / arts producing practice. In terms of what has been revised, so thank you to all of you. I think I listened to at least some of you who are here today. I listened to your feedback in terms of your experiences in round 1, but also how COVID-19 has impacted you as an independent producer. So we completely understand that COVID-19 has created uncertainty in terms of future planning, travel, and gatherings. So just a couple of tips in terms of putting in an application, proposing projects for 2021. Please take COVID-safe practices into account and also consider contingencies while still, presenting what your creative ideas are. And please rest assured that Creative Victoria will be flexible on the timelines of the projects that you put into your application. And the final point there in terms of the program guidelines being updated. So we've updated the things that panelists may consider under each assessment criteria, which again, you can find in the guidelines, and I will be going through that in a minute. So please also make sure to align your responses to the 3 main application questions with these revised dot points under the assessment criteria. So I'll tell you what I mean by that. So firstly, in terms of the assessment criteria, can I just check? I might be speaking too quickly here, or am I okay? Can you give me a thumbs up if I'm okay? Or yeah, okay, I'm getting some thumbs up. Great. Okay, all right. Feel free to unmute yourself and shout out if I'm going too quickly. One thing I will just share as well, across quite a few applications, there was some misunderstanding around two assessment criteria, which is career development and impact. Just to be very clear, when you're talking to the career development criteria, it's about the impact that the funding will have on your development, on you as a producer. Whereas the impact criteria is the impact on the Victorian performing arts sector. So career development is about you and your practice as a producer. Impact on the Victorian performing arts sector is the impact that you will have by being funded, on the impact that you will have on the broader Victorian performing arts sector. So that's where you can talk about the impact you will have on independent artists, on other independent producers, and on the sector as a whole. Okay, so in assessing the career development criteria, and you'll see there, the panel may consider the following dot points. So how the funding will support your career and professional development opportunities, if the plan activities detailed in your application are timely and vital in the context of your career, so why this opportunity and why now? And then the third one there is one that has been revised in light of COVID. So previously, previously, a lot of the assessment criteria spoke about increasing numbers of independent artists and increasing numbers of works presented at market development opportunities. Clearly with COVID, there's a lot of uncertainty there. And so we've revised some assessment criteria to focus more on deepening and maintaining relationships. So this third dot point, for example, how will the funding enable you to maintain and deepen your professional support of Victorian-based independent artists and independent companies? So that's the first criteria there, career development. So I'll just move on to the second one. Ooh, there you go. So the second criteria that panelists will consider is the impact on the Victorian performing arts sector. So again, these are a couple of the things that they may consider. Potential to contribute to and enhance the quality and reputation of Victoria and Victorian performing arts producers. As you are aware, this is a Creative Victoria funded program. It really does need to show the benefit for Victorian-based artists and producers. And the second dot point there is the revised one, which is the potential to maintain and build relationships with local, national, and international partners for the benefit of Victorian artists and producers. And finally, the potential to increase support for diverse creative producers and artists working in Victoria. This is the third criteria here, which is about sustainability of practice. So again, the panel may consider how the funding will support you to develop or remodel your independent producing practices, including your business and financial models, how the funding will support your sustainability holistically as a practitioner, and how you will develop new networks and partnerships. So we revised this first one here in terms of remodeling business and financial models, because obviously of the very deeply felt impact of COVID-19. So we wanted to make sure that people would be able to do that work, and inshallah, if you receive this grant, that you would be supported to do that work of remodeling your business. And then I'll just clarify what's meant by supporting your sustainability holistically as a practitioner. So we are encouraging you to, in addition to thinking about financial sustainability, we're also encouraging you to consider your mental health, strategies of self-care, community care, and peer-to-peer support as examples of how you could think holistically about your sustainability. And I'll just move on to changes to support material. So again, thank you to those of you who gave us your feedback, in your experience putting together an application. So in addition to the 3 application questions, there are support material that you can attach to your application. There is now an additional 1 page of information that you can attach to expand on your application. That was from feedback that we received saying that the character count limit for the 3 application questions was just really restrictive for people to go into much detail about their practice. So that page has been added in response to that. In terms of your budget, so you need to provide a budget breakdown for the $35,000 Unlocking Capacity Grant, as well as other income and expenditure, which will give the panelists any necessary context to your independent producing model. So give enough information so that the panelists can understand your rationale for the planned expenditure of the Unlocking Capacity Grant. So how does that grant fit within the broader context of your independent producing practice? And this advice came directly from the panelists who said that because independent producing is so bespoke to each person, and there's so many nuances of everyone's practice, the panelists are looking at very different models of independent producing. So the budget needs to help them understand what is your model of independent producing. And then with this CV that you're able to submit, you can include a longer CV that can include your producer biography as well as your artist's biographies. And then I will just touch on the projects that involve First Peoples cultural material or content or communities. So the panelists need to see evidence of your thinking or strategies for culturally appropriate ways of producing or collaborating with First Peoples artists/communities. So an example of this might be making sure there's a budget line for consultation with the appropriate elders. Letters of support, it's also, we recommend you submitting a letter of support from any appropriate First Peoples artists, elders, or communities that to confirm that they are wanting to collaborate with you as their independent producer. If there's any more questions about that, I'm around as well to respond to your questions. And I would also recommend reading the Australia Council for the Arts First Nations protocols specific to the performing arts. Again, happy to answer any further questions. Okay, so in terms of frequently asked questions, I'll just stop my screen share and move to, you're all looking very focused. Thank you. So I'll just move on to our frequently asked questions. Hang on a second. Bear with me, everyone. Here we go. Okay. Just share my screen again. Can everyone see? So this is the VIPI frequently asked questions page on the TNA website, and there's a specific one that's for unlocking capacity. So I'll just click on that, and you'll see a range of questions here. I'll just highlight a couple. So let me see here. I get asked this one quite a bit in terms of having done bits of independent producing over the years in between other commitments. Would I qualify for unlocking capacity or the producers mentorship program? So as we say there, we don't penalize people for having life happen in between independent producing gigs. So describe as best as you can the amount of independent producing experience that you have through your CV as well as through your application. And for the unlocking capacity grant, as we mentioned earlier, roughly you do need a minimum of 3 years independent producing experience. I also get asked this one quite a bit in terms of the unlocking capacity grant as a wage. So absolutely you can use the unlocking capacity grant as a wage. We do also recommend allocating some of the grant towards professional development activities. And again, as you heard earlier, the panelists did look on this favorably because it showed that the person was thinking about how they were investing in their own professional growth. In addition to their producing practice supporting other people, supporting artists. Great. Aha, yes, and I did mention this one in terms of what counts as 50% of your professional time. So again, we absolutely acknowledge the impact that COVID has had on people's independent producing practice. And we also just want to acknowledge that for some people, their practice may have shifted to include more time for these activities here. For research, for networking, for professional development, for meetings to maintain relationships with artists. All of these activities can count towards your independent producing practice hours. Another option is it might be more relevant for you to report on your practice prior to the pandemic. That's another option. And then a bit of a Virgo methodology. I'm a Virgo. Happy Virgo season, everyone. Another way to calculate 50% of your professional time is if you halved a full-time working week of 38 hours, you arrive at 19 working hours per week. That being said, we are aware that we do get a lot of applications from parents, who may need to have more flexible working arrangements. So again, as long as through your application, the panelists can see evidence of your commitment to your independent producing practice prior to the pandemic and also currently, you are welcome to apply for the Unlocking Capacity Grant. I will just flag as well, we just closed round 2 for the mentorship program, but there is one more round in early 2021. Another option of going into Unlocking Capacity, applying for Unlocking Capacity, is if you complete the Producers Mentorship Program. Great. Okay, so I might just stop sharing screen there and go back to my slide and bear with my humming as I'm looking for things. Here we go. Okay, great. So I will pass it on to Sasha now from Creative Victoria, just to flag a couple of technical things to be aware of if you are going to apply.
Thanks, Ronnie. I'm just setting up my screen. There we go.
Oh, sorry.
Yep.
Do I need to?
Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, good.
Great. Yeah. Thanks, Ronnie. And before I begin, I would also like to acknowledge that. Whoops, this popped up. Sorry. Yeah, I would also like to acknowledge that the traditional owners of the land that I'm working and living on, the unceded lands of the Wurundjeri, Woiwurrung and Bunurong peoples of the Kulin Nation. And I would also like to pay my respects to their ancestors, elders, to any First Peoples creatives and producers joining us today, and to the generations to come. So I am a Malaysian Chinese woman with long hair tied up in a ponytail, and I'm wearing a black top and light gray cardigan. And as Rani mentioned, I'm the arts officer at Creative Victoria, and any questions you have around the grants portal, technical issues, access support, etc., can be directed to me. So there are just a few things that I like to touch upon just in relation to the grant application and the portal. So firstly, starting your application. If this is your first time applying for a grant through Creative Victoria's portal, you will need to create an account before you start your application. And one thing to bear in mind is that Creative Victoria is currently running a few different programs, funding programs at the moment. So make sure you select the correct program when you start your application. Second thing that I would like to touch on is on auspice application. So you have the option to get your application auspiced by an organization. And if you decide to do so, there is an additional step involved for the organization. So you will need to register for an account on the grant portal if you do not have one. After that, the auspicing organization will start the application, not you, and connect your grant account to the application. So you will need to provide the organization your contact code and your email address registered to the grant portal. Often I get applicants asking me where to find the contact code. So just to give you a quick overview, this is the grant portal. You click on update my contact details and circle on the very top there, it's your contact code. It starts with CON dash and then the number. So this is the contact code that you will need to provide the auspicing organization along with your email address. Just one quick thing within the grant application, there was a request to show you the budget section of the application form. Generally, we advise applicants to work on their budget in the budget drafting tool provided on the web page, and then transfer the budget lines across onto the form. So this is a screenshot of the budget section within the grant application on the portal. And if you go to section 5, so at the very top here, I think you can see my mouse, it says you need to put in your grant amount requested, and this is the full amount. And this amount needs to match the income line where you're going to put VP unlocking capacity. So I've got VP unlocking capacity, it's unconfirmed, type of grant, Creative Victoria grant, and this amount here needs to match the grant amount that you're requesting in this funding program. So in the expenditures section, as Rani mentioned, list down as much as possible your expenses throughout 3 years. And under CV expenditure column over here, you will need to specify the amount that this funding is put towards that specific expense line. So as you can see, I've kind of pulled out this drop-down menu. You can select where, you can describe the expenses and then select the expenditure type.
Sasha?
Yep, sorry.
I'll just give one quick feedback about the budget, because we're asking people to be more detailed with year 1, but you don't need to be super detailed for years 2 and 3 in your budget, because, you know, we also just want to acknowledge how hard it is to plan ahead right now. So give the more detail about year 1, but years 2 and 3, if you do receive the grant, we will ask you to submit, resubmit a budget anyway at the end of the first year and at the end of the second year. So just give detail about year 1.
Great, thanks for pointing that out, Rani. And just one quick one. So when you've put in this grant amount requested here, the difference below in this section should be 0. So right now it still states 105,000 because I've not added any expenses to it. But once you fill in all your budget lines, this difference amount should be 0. Yeah, that's pretty much what I want to share in terms of, I'm just going to stop sharing my screen. Yeah, in terms of the grant portal and how it looks like, especially for those who have not applied for a grant through Creative Victoria before, just so you get a sense of, yeah, the sections involved. But if at any point, if you have any difficulties navigating around the grant portal, or if you require additional access support, feel free to reach out to me. I believe Rani has a slide with my contact details in there. Yeah, I'm passing it back on to you, Rani. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah, great. Great. I mean, we went through that quite quickly. So can I just get a pulse check of, like, does anyone need a break, or are you right for us to just keep going? If you want a break, maybe give me a thumbs up. If you don't, all good? No? Okay. All right, let's keep going then. So let me see here. I think, yeah, we're okay to, you know what, I'll just announce this now. We've just got an upcoming VIPI opportunity that I wanted all of you to be aware of, which is we'll be offering one-on-one coaching sessions between independent artists and independent producers. There's 30 sessions available, so 30 one-off sessions, one-off 1-hour sessions for one independent producer and one independent artist to, you know, meet together and have a coaching session. And both the artist as well as the producer will be paid $100 per person for the hour. So if you're an independent producer, or even if you're an independent artist, but for the producers here, please make sure that you're on the TNA Independent Producers database, and my colleague Simone will put the link in the chat in terms of how to add yourself to that database. Otherwise, let's open up for questions. I'm all ears. And also, Suri had a great suggestion, which is for people to just raise their hand in the Zoom function. So I think that's on the participants list, isn't it, Suri? Is that right? Yeah. Okay, I'll just see. I see you, Sophie, Jennifer. Anyone else? Cool. Jennifer, you want to go ahead?
Yes, hello. I have a few questions, but I'll start with one and then see if anyone else asks them or have time or whatever. Just what you mentioned before about art form diversity. So are you talking about diversity within our own productions, or art forms offered by diverse people in your diverse groups? Do you understand what I'm asking? Like a further definition of what that might mean?
Yeah. So
thank you.
Hang on, I think I was still trying to process your question. It's art form diversity within the groups that you're working with, or
Or is it art forms that are practiced by the diverse, the groups you name as diverse, being First Nations people, culturally diverse, and that kind of thing?
Yeah. Sasha, feel free to jump in as well. But I suppose from observing the first round, some of the things that the panelists had to keep in mind was making sure that there was a diversity of art forms being supported through unlocking capacity. So it couldn't just be 3 grants that were all about dance, you know? Like it had to be people, the panelists really had to keep in mind the producers working across different art forms. Yeah. And some, you know, some producers were able to talk about supporting artists who, you know, some of them might be in circus, some of them might be in dance, some of them might be in theater, you know. So if that is the case for your practice, then feel free to express that in your application. But the panelists have to keep in mind diversity of art forms anyway, regardless, you know. So, yeah. Great. Sorry, I'll make sure to keep an eye on the participant list. Any other questions? Otherwise, yeah. Oh, I had a hand up from Elena. Elena, am I saying your name right? Sorry.
Elena. Yeah,
Elena,
no.
sorry. Elena, and then Jennifer, you've got another one. Yep.
My practice does a combination of representing shows that that I make with, you know, in collaboration with groups of artists, and also producing independent artists in their own productions.
Mm-hmm.
I know that you're more focused on kind of producing external work rather than self-produced work, but do you look at producers who have a combination of both?
Yeah, I mean, again, as long as you can demonstrate in your application that you support other artists, you know, independent artists, collectives, or unfunded companies, that's what unlocking capacity is trying to support. It's not about supporting you producing your own work, if that makes sense, as an artist. It's about you producing for others. So I would focus your application on that part of your practice. And in terms of eligibility criteria, you know, we don't support people who are working full-time, for example, right? So we totally appreciate that people wear different hats. Some of the time you might be part-time working on your self-produced works, and some of the time you're producing for others. Again, for unlocking capacity, just focus on the work that you're doing for others. Yeah, because it's not about supporting the other part of your practice. Does that make sense? Yeah, cool, awesome. Jennifer, AKA Sophie, want to go again?
Okay, cool. Thank you. So just in regards to the wage that you said that we're permitted to apply for, I noticed when I looked through the guidelines, it said from 35,000 a year for 3 years, and you did give me the link to the salary survey that you did as an indication of how much wage to request. But at what point are we putting ourselves at a disadvantage for requesting a certain amount? Like, do you recommend if for someone like myself who I want to put full-time work into producing, do I ask for the full-time salary, or are we asking for a 0.8, or do we give examples in our budget of I earn this already, so therefore I should only get 0.6 covered by this grant, or is it better that we say I'd like you to cover my full wage plus these other professional development things, and do you know what I mean? I'm not sure how much to ask for.
Yeah. Actually, Sophie/Jennifer, we actually assume that people would ask for the full amount, 35,000 over 3 years. So there's no penalty. You're not disadvantaged if you ask for the full amount. Firstly, was that what?
Okay, so maybe I misunderstood the guideline. So 35 was the maximum you could ask for over each year, over the 3 years.
Over each year, yeah. And most people did ask for that, and it was only an anomaly actually in terms of the people who didn't ask for the full amount. And in terms of how that breaks down in terms of your salary, again, it's just so nuanced to everyone's practice. But I guess what I can share is that the applications that allocated at least some, and when I say some, I mean it's like 5,000 out of 35,000 that is going towards professional development. It was looked on as more favorable because it showed that they were also thinking not just about salary for your regular independent producing practice, but also some of the resources was going towards developing you professionally. So that would be my advice. Sorry, Suri, was that you? Did you have a?
Yeah. Sorry,
Okay.
probably can't see my hand within
Oh,
backdrop here.
I'm trying.
I wanted to sort of just express, like looking at your website as well, with the NIACA initiative. I'm just wondering, can you explain a little bit more in regards to what you can offer through the Indigenous initiatives? And you mentioned something briefly before about First Nations, which I didn't really get clarity on.
I mean, basically across all of VIPI, it's a priority to engage First Peoples, culturally linguistically diverse, and or people of color, deaf and disabled people, and people based regionally. So they're the four, I guess, target groups in terms of demographics of people that we're wanting to engage with VIPI across all streams. So that applies as well with unlocking capacity. Does that make sense? Yeah. It's basically us saying there's four groups of people that are a priority in terms of receiving VIPI support.
Yeah, cool. Because I'd like to look more into that. Maybe I'll have a discussion with you outside of this later.
For sure. Yep. Simone. Yep.
Yeah, I might just add to that our.
Simone, you cut out. Simone, maybe while we're waiting, I might just move on to Peter and Jennifer again. Peter?
Do you have any examples of professional development activities that have been funded previously?
Off the top of my head, it was things like mentorships. So applicants having identified a mentor to take their practice to the next level. It was applicants wanting to do a business planning course. There might also be, actually one important one that some people have applied with was having an associate or assistant producer to help them, to help in their development of their business. Yeah, does that help? That's just off the top of my head, yeah. Jennifer, do you want to ask another question?
Yeah, so the mention of collaborations from before with non-artistic businesses, I guess. You have some examples of what would be a good thing to include with those collaborations?
Yeah, again, I would only include it if it's relevant, right, to your practice. I suppose I was just sharing some observations. So it's things like, let me see, again, off the top of my head, people who had already had relationships with science kind of related organizations, so that were interested in working with artists, that were interested in working with specific communities. It might also involve, off the top of my head, people having qualifications in other areas that they wanted to apply to the independent producing practice. What do I mean by that? That sounds really vague. I'm trying to mind my brain here. So for example, having a particular lens on producing, so social impact producing, and articulating that, expressing that in your application, that you're not just about producing in support of artists, but you're also about the social and environmental and political impact that you want to have as a producer. What else? That's probably enough, hey? I think that's the capacity of my brain right now. Yeah, okay. I'll just let Simone back in and hopefully get Simone to respond to your question again, Suri. In the meantime, feel free if anyone else has more questions. Nope. Okay. Wow, this is a lot quicker than I thought it would go. And Simone's still not in, so I think we'll need to let that go maybe.
That's cool. Maybe we can line up something later with Simone.
Yeah, sounds good. I think she's trying, but yeah, not happening. Okay, well, I guess a final reminder is...
Rani, there's another question.
Oh, is there? Oh, yep.
Yeah, I just wanted to, it's maybe related to the question that Simone was going to answer, but I just wanted to go into a little bit more detail about the diverse communities that you're particularly interested in engaging with. Is there an expectation that each producer would kind of have a project that was looking at each of those communities, or is it just kind of as usual for grant processes? And engagement with those communities is good, and that's one of the things you're looking for, but it's not sort of so specific as that.
Yeah, it's the sorry, Elena. Simone, don't worry about it. I'm onto the recording. Cool. And no, again, you do need to be authentic, right, in the applications that you're putting in. If you're actually going to be working with those communities, then great. But if not, please don't just make it up, right? Because that's not going to lead to good engagement anyway. And it's those 4 target groups have been identified because there is a need to diversify who is able to work as independent producers. So that's why that's been very explicit across all of the communications with VIPI. But again, you know, only if you have existing relationships and if you already have conversations and connections with those communities. Otherwise, it's, yeah, again, like I said, it won't lead to meaningful engagement anyway. So, yeah, does that help to answer? Yeah. I think maybe we should have a one-on-one chat as well, Elena. Elena, yes. If you're currently in Adelaide, because we've had a few inquiries from people who are normally based in Victoria, but then are not, you know, for good reason. But maybe we should have a one-on-one chat about that, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Nice. Any final questions, everyone? And thank you for making the time today as well. No? All good? My gosh, that's the most efficient info session we've ever done in 12 months. Thank you. All right, well, thank you for coming. We'll wrap it up there. And as I mentioned earlier, I am available for any further, you know, catch-ups, questions. Just email me, rani@tna.org.au. I work 3 days a week, and I do try and, you know, set up phone calls as quickly as I can to answer your queries. Otherwise, good luck. Oh, and bye, Sophie/Jen's dog. Oh my gosh, too much. Stop it.
Thanks,
Stop it.
everyone. Thanks, Rani.
Thanks, everybody.